If there was one person everybody wanted to be after the war, to the point of caricature, said Raymond Williams, it was Lawrence. In 1960, after Penguin had been tried at the Old Bailey for issuing an unexpurgated edition of Lady Chatterley's Lover, Lawrence was hailed as the mascot of the sexual revolution. But when, in 1969, Kate Millett skewered him in sexual politics for his submissive heroines and bullying heroes, he became one of those figures whose name triggers a psychological lockdown. Lawrence is still on trial. When I was growing up in the 1980s, my mother wouldn't have his novels in the house, and my female tutor at university refused to teach him. Being loyal to Lawrence, especially as a woman, has always required some sort of explanation. So here is mine. Like many readers, I came to him as a teenager, and knew him only as a writer of fiction. Not all of it was good, and not all of it was sane, but there was still nothing to compare. He asked the same questions as I did, and I liked his fierce certainties, his belief in the novel as the one bright book of life, his belief in himself as right and the rest of us as wrong, his insistence that the unconscious was an organ like the liver. I liked the fact that his women were physically alive and emotionally complex, while his men were either megaphones or homoerotic fantasies, that he cared so much about the sickness of the world, that he saw in himself the whole of mankind. I liked his solidarity with the instincts, his willingness to cause offence, his rants, his earnestness, his identification with animals and birds, his forensic analyses of sexual jealousy, the rapidity of his thought, the heat of his sentences, and his enjoyment of brightly coloured stockings. The Lawrence I have returned to in my own middle years, this time as a biographical subject, is composed of mysteries rather than certainties. Where I once found insight, I now find bewildering levels of naivety. For all his claims to prophetic vision, Lawrence had little idea what was going on in the room, let alone in the world. His fidelity as a writer was not to the truth, but to his own contradictions, and reading him today is like tuning into a radio station whose frequency keeps changing. He was a modernist with an aching nostalgia for the past, a sexually repressed priest of love, a passionately religious non-believer, a critic of genius who invested in his own worst writing. Of all the Laurentian paradoxes, however, the most arresting is that he was an intellectual who devalued the intellect, placing his faith in the wisdom of the very body that throughout his life was failing him. Dismantle his contradictions, however, and you take away the structure of his being. D.H. Lawrence, the enemy of Freud, impressively defies psychoanalysis. How can biography do justice to Lawrence's complexities? Just as writers of fiction might provide a disclaimer declaring that what follows is a work of imagination not based on real characters, and writers of non-fiction might provide a disclaimer declaring that what follows is not a work of imagination and very much based on real characters, I should similarly state that Burning Man is a work of non-fiction, which is also a work of imagination. I should further declare that I am unable to distinguish between Lawrence's art and Lawrence's life, which was equally a work of imagination, and nor do I distinguish Lawrence's fiction from his non-fiction. I read his novels, stories, letters, essays, poems, and plays as exercises in autofiction, which genre he pioneered in order to get around the restrictions of genre. Art for my sake, he quipped, but he was being entirely serious. Accordingly, his letters are stories, his stories are poems, his poems are dramas, his dramas are memoirs, his memoirs are travel books, his travel books are novels, his novels are sermons, his sermons are manifestos for the novel, and his manifestos for the novel, like his writings on history, his literary criticism and the tales in this book, are accounts of what it was like to be D.H. Lawrence. Inferno. England, 1915 to 1919. Part 1. Dante belonged to the close of the great medieval period, called the Age of Faith. His chief work, the Divine Comedy, tells of his vision.